Hey friends, welcome to the channel. In this video, I'm going to walk through Framer and Webflow. These are probably arguably the coolest website design builders out there with the biggest scale. Just before we begin, I'm gonna go really high level on the details I'm gonna cover. I'm not gonna get into all the weeds, but if you are a developer or you are a designer or someone who wants to design a website on one of these platforms, I'm gonna give you a good understanding of how to think about these platforms as you get started. But to make sure you get the most value from this video and as you compare with other videos, one thing to note is that I've built a lot of sites on Framer and very few on Webflow. I've used Webflow for really advanced projects, but my expertise is more on the Framer side. I've been using it pretty consistently over the last 18 months and definitely over the last 12 months on some really large and cool projects. So right out of the gate, one of the key things you want to notice about these two platforms is that Webflow and Framer look very similar in their structure. They're going to have a lot of features and buttons on the right-hand side for you to control. And then on the left-hand side are going to be your pages, your layers, and all of that. So they give you full control of both of these elements. But Framer is much more of a design tool like a Figma that you have separate canvases that you work on for every screen size, which is actually pretty cool. So for example, here on my screen, you could see all the layers on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, you could see all the different controls you have for every individual layer. One of the things I absolutely love about Framer, and this is going to be important for you if you are not a web designer by trade, they use language that makes sense to a non-web developer. For example, when you talk about layout, they give you two types of layout. In Webflow, they give you like 7. It's not more options, it's just more confusing. So here, they're going to give you layout and you get type stack or grid, direction, distribute, align, wrap, gap, and padding. These elements give you full control of how you want your content to show up on a page. And if you've never built a website before on either of these, you might be like, what the heck is that? If that is your response, Framer is going to be way better for you than Webflow. Because Webflow, which it's hard to see here, but you could kind of see if I zoom in, it says display, block, flex, grid, none. These are really confusing if you don't know what block is versus flex versus grid, and knowing how to layer these elements on top of each other is going to be really hard your first go. With Framer, you'll have a little bit more ease understanding it once you get started. There is a learning curve in either case, but once you start seeing how it's built, you'll have a lot of control on how to navigate it. So in this case, when it comes to ease of use, I would say Framer is way easier. When it comes to the next point, which is going to be really important for a lot of you, it's going to be the CMS. This is the content management system. Think of a CMS as like a blog, or if you have anything similar to a blog, anything of like categories, tags, any type of element like that. Webflow is going to win hands down on their capabilities with the CMS because they have relational databases or relational links between different CMSs. Framer does not, and they don't support it, which is a huge bummer. Now, again, if you don't understand what I'm saying, this is really going to matter for you if you are going to build, let's say, like a directory website, where you are going to have, let's say it's directory for like homes, like a Zillow. You're going to have all these different homes, show all the options, but then you're going to have ways of filtering it with different kinds of categories, maybe different types of options, maybe different authors. If you're going to do something really robust like that, Webflow is going to be way easier for you and powerful than Framer. Framer out of the gate just does not operate at the scale or size that you may want with a CMS like that. It works great for a simple blog, for a simple CMS, but anything beyond that, as of right now, when I'm publishing this video, is a really difficult thing to build in any type of relational database. One other note I do want to make with this is when you look at the CMS in Webflow, it's just not the prettiest user experience. This could be a really uh, like not a great example or not a big deal, but honestly, the CMS in Framer is beautiful. Like it's really elegant, it's easy to work with, click through, it's really easy to preview, hit save, publish. Like the whole process is gorgeous. It's just unfortunate because you can't link them in any type of relational way. So for example, if you have a blog, the author, you could create an author CMS with the blog CMS because those are typically separate, but connecting them in a robust way is very difficult to do. It's all workarounds and things like that. So that's a bit unfortunate. It works in a very simple format, but at scale, it's a little harder. So Webflow wins on that. The next one is going to be this. Let's talk about SEO. Honestly, both of these platforms perform really well when it comes to SEO, but there are some things to consider. First and foremost, if you use Google PageSpeed Insights, I would just recommend typing in webflow.com, seeing how it goes. And then I would also do that again for framer.com and see how that goes. Both of them don't really score that great on Core Web Vitals. Most of the internet struggles with Core Web Vitals. So you can see here, framer.com, Core Web Vitals failed. You can see here as well, webflow.com failed. Both of them are built on their platforms, but they both fail. It's because Google's reasoning here or their setup. Basically, Google's setup here is kind of confusing for everybody because Core Web Vitals is important, but it's also one factor out of 200. So some people consider it too important, but overall, in terms of SEO, both of them perform really, really well. Again, if you're trying to scale a blog or if you're trying to scale some type of directory, highly recommend Webflow, and their SEO is great. But if you're building a beautiful site that you want to function well, form well, and have cool animations, both of them do a great job. But if you're not a designer by trade, I'm going to say Framer is way better. And basically a pro tip for you is if you're just starting out, maybe you don't love it, but really try to find a template that is what you're looking for and start with that. Pay the 50, 150 bucks, whatever it is, to use that to get started. It's going to save you a ton of time and it'll show you how the platform works. Yes, there are YouTube videos that will start from scratch and show you how to get started, but that's going to cost a lot of time where spending 150 bucks will get you something started that looks great from the outset that you could build on. Again, I'm going to say Framer is going to be way more intuitive on that side of it with starting with a template, changing the content, making it your own, while Webflow is going to be way more complicated and just understanding the biggest issue here is going to be classes. So let's talk about that. So here you can see this is Framer setup. We've already taken a look at it. There is nothing on the right side that talks about classes. Now, the whole internet works with classes. That's how you design things. It's a really cool feature. But Webflow focuses on classes. And so you could see here that it's like adding in these different classes, these style selectors. This to me is really difficult for non-web designers or people who are going to work on a project and maybe touch that project again in a year or two. You have to somehow remember your nomenclature, how you write these, what you used, how in depth you went. And if you make the site bigger as you go, you have to consider more layers as you go. It just gets really complicated quickly. So when it comes down to this, classes are a way for you to design the page. So basically you say product description should have a position relative, font should be this font, weight should be this, all of that stuff. Then from there, you have to create all these random classes, align it to the bottom, align it left, make it small, make it big, all of that. It gets really confusing. With Framer, it's way easier and you could have all these pre-set up features, functions, modules. And again, Webflow does this, but you have to work with classes. With Framer, you don't work with classes specifically. You just work within the editor as if you were using Figma. And if you have any experience with Figma, you're gonna love Framer. That's like their tagline basically. If you love Figma, you're gonna love Framer. So both of these tools work very much in a similar way. And as you can see here, you see two versions of the website. You see desktop, you see mobile. You could add as many versions as you want. So if you want one for a tablet, you could add that in. If you want one for larger screens, you could add it in, and you could see them next to each other on this visual editor. Versus in Webflow, you would have to go to the top of the page here and click these buttons. Yes, you can set them all up, but it's less of a visual editor in that way, and it's more of a like module you click on to see what it looks like and have to go back and forth. Now, one of the most important things of both of these platforms is going to be their ability for animation and interactions. And so I don't know what to tell you. Again, in my book, Framer wins because they're just a lot easier to work with. And overall, they're just more clear in their representation as you're designing it on how it's actually going to look. Webflow feels more complex. It does offer you more depth and interesting interactions that you can do, but generally Webflow is not going to be as robust in terms of usability as it is in functionality. It's like you could do a million amazing things, but you just have to know how to do it somehow. And so it gets complicated quickly with Webflow. I've used Webflow on a lot of cool animations. The process of creating them, setting them up is just a lot of work. Framer, one thing that's really cool about it, there's an awesome community around Framer. And I think this exists with Webflow as well, but my experience with it is this is way easier. If you see a really cool animation, somebody could design it and share it with you in the Framer world. You could just copy it and paste it into your project and then just make slight adjustments or tweaks to it. You can go find a free template from Framer and you see a cool interaction there. Basically copy that section, paste it on a new project. Really easy to do. And you have that interaction right away on your site. No extra clicks, no extra work. This is a really cool feature of Framer. Webflow is way more robust in like terms of the tiny meticulous details. But in terms of this whole experience, again, if you're a brand new designer, you're going to have a lot more fun in Framer than you will with Webflow. But with everything I've said, I've really positioned this video to a brand new designer. But if you are someone who is looking to design websites at scale and do it for your clients, honestly, either platform could be a great place to start. You'll run into less client issues with Webflow. And what I mean is if a client wants it and you're getting better and better and better at the platform, most likely you could do it with Webflow, where Framer does have some limitations. Like it's unfortunate, but they just released their first version of like Framer Forms. Like it's the middle of June 2024 or it's the end of June. So it's basically July 2024 and they're just releasing this. It is a newer platform, but in either case, it depends on what your long-term goal is. And if you do want the most robust platform that will give you the most optionality in terms of how you could bring it to life for a client, Webflow may be your go-to to really bring that to life. Now, I know you may have more questions. There's a lot to consider when you're building a website. So use the comments down below. If I have any feedback or if anybody in the audience has feedback, they can reply to your comments down below as you're trying to decide which tool is best for you. With that, thank you for watching and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.